Hey everyone, welcome back to Dad Space, the podcast for dads by dads. And if you've ever wanted to spend more time outdoors, which we probably should do more of, get away from your devices, put your phone down. Well, after this podcast, go outside, and you need to meet with somebody who's going to bring you outside and help you connect with yourself and your surroundings. Mike has got an amazing thing at projectmindfullyoutdoors.co, and he leads people and gives people the tools to live life better. And I'm so excited to have Mike here. He was on the How to Podcast series to talk about his podcast, which we're going to talk about here as well. But I'm so proud to introduce Mike to all the dads listening. Mike, welcome to Dad Space.
Thanks for having me back. I appreciate it.
It's great. Mike, tell everybody where you are in this big world of ours.
So right now I'm sitting out here in a field in the middle of Michigan during a thunderstorm.
So that all that ambiance is for free, everybody. That's real thunderstorm. That's not added later. That's great. Mike, talk a little bit about Project Mindfully Outdoors. What is it? Why does it exist? Who is it for?
So Project Mindfully Outdoors is a project that bridges the thrill of adventure as far as getting outside, going on a hike, and just experiencing nature with the art of meditation in order to not only combat things such as depression and anxiety, but also to help you understand your place within the grand scheme of things a little bit better so you can apply yourself to those relationships that mean something to you. It also benefits because it gives you an opportunity to slow down, to reflect and find out who you are and channel that into that greater mission.
How long have you had Project Mindfully Outdoors?
Project Mindfully Outdoors has officially been up and running for about 5 years through written word and podcasting. And within the last 8 months, it's taken a transition into a full-on live in-person experience.
That's great. So people are coming to you in groups and individuals, or is it all groups? How's this
It's
work?
a combination. I'll do a one-on-one session with you. I'll take you hiking, whatever the case may be. But I also do it in a group setting as well in order to introduce people to the ideas. Because it's one of those things that has a much better impact when it's in person. But for some people, they're more comfortable with a group setting. Others, their issues or their triggers may make it a little bit easier to do it one-on-one.
Talk a little bit about your podcast too, Mike. Tell us about the show.
So the podcast covers essentially the whole concept of what wilderness meditation is through storytelling, not only based off of my journey of going from rock bottom to where I'm at now, but also I tap into a lot of like Native American storytelling, historical figures, and the lessons that can be gained from their journeys as well.
Great. And for your podcast, we can get it everywhere then? It's available.
You can find it anywhere. Whatever your favorite app is that you listen to a podcast on, I'm there.
Okay. Why is the outdoor so important to you? You don't seem like the type of person who likes to sit in a office building in a cubicle with no windows staring at a computer screen. That doesn't sound like Mike to me. Why is outside so important to you?
You know, it's not only is it like the safest place in the world that I find, because everything you interact with doesn't have time to tell a story of judgment or tap into the ideas that build that story of self-suffering that we all carry. It gives you an opportunity to just come out, connect, and see the world live and move within its natural order. But for me personally, I remember being a kid and chasing my grandfather around on all his outdoor adventures, and that was where the spark went for me. And then, like I mentioned about my point of rock bottom, I wound up being homeless, started living in my truck in an old deer blind. And that became very pivotal within my ability to stand back on my own feet as time went on.
And as far as your dad's story, Mike, tell us a little bit about your family.
So I have 4 kids. They range, 2 of them are adults, and the other 2 are teens and early teens. And for a long time, I battled depression. I battled anxiety. I hated it. So therefore I put a mask on it. And it affected those relationships. So I was not the greatest of fathers for both of my career as a father, but as I learned to take that mask off and befriend everything that I was hiding from, I learned how to become a better father. And a great example of that is I've been married twice. Both of those marriages ended in divorce. The first one, I had a daughter that I lost touch with for many, many years. And through taking the time to take that mask off and discover who I am, it gave me the inspiration to run out there and find her because I didn't feel like a failure anymore.
So that's an interesting relationship to rebuild. How long did it take to do that?
It's still in the rebuilding processes. It's been a few years now. We have more good times than we do bad, but there's still that elephant of the room. As far as you weren't there for so long, you're here now. Why? And it's a question that we both really struggled to address for a long time. And now that we've recently started to take that journey, it's given her a better understanding of not only who I was, who I am now, but bridges that gap to kind of answer those questions. And that's brought us a lot closer and given us the opportunity to really start exploring that father-daughter relationship on a very natural kind of level.
I think that time is the enemy in any kind of strained relationship with our kids, whether you're divorced or not. Your kids might take a path in life that maybe that's not the path you would wish for them. And there's a point in time where you kind of lose touch with your kids a little bit, where they've gone places or done things, and it's caused some strife and caused some issues between parent and kid. For those dads, I think a lot of guilt comes in the picture where you don't have that connection with your kids. How do you address the dad guilt when you have a strained relationship with your kids?
I think I did a lot of that in the process of getting to actually see her in person. As I was getting over the depression and anxiety, I realized what led me from marriage one right into marriage two, and that was I felt like I was a failure because that first one fell apart, and that was my definition of who I was. As I went through the process of preparing myself, realizing that journey had to be on her terms, she had to be the focus. It wasn't about me; it was about her. So letting it play out in a way that she was comfortable helped me walk through that journey a little bit because I could see the progression within itself, within her. From that very first moment when she found out that I was trying to make connection to that moment when we met at a park, started spending a couple hours together, other week, talking, getting to know each other a little bit, seeing how comfortable she got with that, made me feel that I was on the right track. And as I progressed through that process of ultimately getting the full weekend invitation to the us, starting to let go of that because I realized that was that. That was that old layer, that old chapter of me. This chapter that I'm in now is actually doing something to benefit her.
What an interesting moment to come and reconnect with your kids and get to know them again. Like, that just seems like so, when they're so little, and you're just as a new dad, you're so excited to have this new life in your life. The idea of ever being separated from your kids or disconnected from your kids for any degree of time just seems so strange. It's like all you want to do is spend every minute you can with these kids. And then as they grow up, things can happen, and it's such a hard thing to come back from. And I guess, again, back to the dad guilt thing, it's just the idea that there's so much time that's gone past that could have been strengthening that relationship. And I'm envisioning somebody listening to this, Mike, that is in that spot right now too. And they're like, I don't even know where to start. I don't even know how to rebuild that relationship. I'm kind of stuck in this moment.
That's where I found myself for a long time, because it wasn't ever a case that I didn't want to be there. It was
Yeah.
as that time builds up, you lose track of how to reach out to somebody. So I had to go through that whole process too. But in making that initial contact, and then going through the court system, it brought up a lot of fear. Like, these people are going to just tell me to go away. I'm wasting my time, all these limiting beliefs. Then that court date came around, and when the referee said, what is it you want? As if he was going to hand me whatever it was I wanted. And I still had the original court order on file. So I could have been like, I want every other weekend, blah, 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 what the thing said. But it gets back to the idea that when you re-enter somebody's life, you got to do it on their terms. You got to give them the time. Just because you're ready don't mean they are. So understanding that is one of the very first steps. Number one, the fear that you're experiencing, the insecurity, going to be okay. Because I'll tell you, that day at the park, I felt like Davy Crockett standing in the Alamo. In fact, my icebreaker ended up being, I get it. You can hate me. You can stab me, throw me in the river, whatever it is. I'll understand, because I deserve whatever it is you feel is warranted for the situation. And when she hugged me and said, I don't want to do that. I want to actually get to know you. It took all that stuff away. It made that guilt that we keep talking about so much softer. Yeah, there's times where, the overcompensation comes in and you're like, this is really weird. This is really hard. So I'm going to do this just to forget about it. But you got to understand that it means more to them to not mask those uncomfortable moments. You have to walk those paths with your kid. You got to embrace it. Understand that you're blazing a trail together. And ultimately gets back to what I do for a living. Take the thrill of the adventure, the thrill of the unknown, and just apply it.
In true Mike fashion, you met her at a park. Of course, outdoor. That makes sense.
What? I will tell you the other part of the early bonding experience you'll get a kick out is, we started spending time together. We bonded over making fires. Go figure, right?
Yeah. There you go. Well, you were on my How to Podcast series, and we recorded that with you sitting across the fire pit from me. And like I said to you in that recording, I could smell the smoke through Zoom here on my computer screen. I just felt like I was there with you. And you're right, like getting outside, getting back in touch with nature, getting outside and getting in touch with yourself. I think it's really important for the men specifically that you work with through Project Mindfully Outdoors. How can we do better at this? Guys just don't seem to have that natural wiring to do those things, where some of the women in our life seem to be more connected. Men just don't seem to have that to the same degree. And I think we need that. And like working with you helps us to develop that. But how can we be more in touch with our surroundings and our world around us? And what's the benefit?
Well, I want to first put a spin on the way that you said that, because it's not that we don't have the ability. It's the fact that our course of life doesn't allow us the time. And the reason I say it that way is because what instantly comes to mind, the figure that comes to my mind is Crazy Horse. And the reason that he comes to mind is it takes stepping away. It takes self-reflection. Every time that a decision came up that he had to make, or a painful experience that he had to go through, he would take that time to retreat, to meditate, and find some isolation to reflect on what he had experienced, whether it was his own fault or just the set of circumstances or the combination of the two. We're all afforded that time. We have moments before we go to bed where there's just silent self-reflection. And if you apply that stuff with intention, it helps with expressing that ability to connect, that ability to do these things. One part that I forgot to leave out in the beginning of this was I was also involved in talk therapy through this process. One of the most calming things that my therapist had mentioned to me was the idea that, regardless of whatever the course of her day brings, at the end of the night, she has those few minutes to, sit there quietly before she goes to sleep. And at some point, she's formed a mental image of who you are, or who she wants you to be. And if you just think about it from that perspective, it really makes it seem like something that you can achieve, something that you can do. Because I believe that just the energy that we have within us is a natural projection of the character and the heart that we have. We may struggle to express that. We might get turned around trying to, but it's still there. And that's what that reflection, those silent moments, allow us the opportunity to really tap into, is building the vocabulary and expressing what's really in our hearts. Because if you think about the way we go through our day, we work hours and hours on end to provide, right? The reason that we do that is because we care. And the reason that the only way most of us know to express our heart that way is because that's what we were taught. And if you want to go out and you want to learn how to do something more, you have to go out and actually learn it. You have to experience life. You got to go out and do these things that are difficult and challenging, such as, the subject we're talking about here, in order to build that vocabulary. And then as you build the vocabulary, you put it up to the test. And if it sticks, you found a new way to express the core of I care, that core of compassion, that core of providing, and all these things that we get so locked into through the course of every day.
Going back to the whole idea about retreating, and sometimes when you think of it in the context of fighting, for example, retreating seems like failure. Like, oh no, I'm losing, I'm going to retreat. I'm backing up, they're winning, I'm losing, so I'm going to retreat. But your context of retreat is different. It's not a failure, it's not a sign of failure, it's a sign of strength to go back, think about what the next step is, and then attack or go and face whatever's in front of you. So I like how you're reframing the idea of retreating as not a sign of failure.
It's not a sign of failure, and it's not a sign of weakness. The failure and the weakness come in, as Seneca wrote, when you go up against something that was unexpected. And you can say, I never expected that to happen. That's why the outcome came out the way that it was. But I still fought on. If you realize, man, that mountain is a little bit higher than I thought to climb right now, but I can go back and I can craft some rope or whatever out of whatever materials are in the environment to help me get through and get up that mountain. That's brilliant. That's a sign of strength, and that's a sign of wisdom.
That's a skill that doesn't come naturally, I would say, for many people. Maybe some people, but not everyone. And it's something that we can all develop, right? It's something we can work on. I like how you said getting the vocabulary. Like you have to learn these words. You have to learn these actions. It's something that we need to spend some time on.
We do. And, you get back to the fact that we have this pride or this ego that continues to make us constantly smash our head against the wall and repeat the same cycle over and over again. I hit that point, when I was homeless, sitting in my truck going, every single time I try to form a relationship, this is what happens. This is the outcome. So I got to look at things differently. I got to do something different. And we all had these kind of like aha moments where the ego gets knocked out of us and we have to rethink. We look at that again as defeat. We look at it negatively. But in reality, it's what prepares us for those challenging moments that shine the light down on us. I want to go back to Crazy Horse for a second because, yeah, he had his strengths and the things that we know about him, but he also had many weaknesses and many failures and many wrong choices that he made as well. One of the most blatant ones that sticks out in my mind was the first woman that he fell in love with. She ended up being married off to some other guy. Down the line, he wasn't exactly providing for her, making her happy. She bore his children, raised them, whatever. And then she left him and got back with Crazy Horse. They went to, a local family's tribe and stayed with them. Well, this guy found out where they were at. He wasn't having any of her decision, even though it was an honorable decision and it was a decision that she was allowed to make. So he showed up one night and walked into the teepee where they were at, shot Crazy Horse in the face, all because of that, demanded that she come back. Well, he ended up surviving that. And out of that, the different factions of the tribe actually were ready to take up the civil war and take up arms in his defense and this and that, which is something that he didn't want. Yeah, he wanted her in his life. However, the cost was much greater. He realized the mistake that he had made was ever engaging in the secondary relationship with her. So he put all those personal feelings aside, found the retrospect in it and how that would apply to the grand scheme of things, and realized for the benefit of himself and everyone around him that it was time to take a different course. And these are the kind of things that us as men really get caught up in our mistakes, especially when we see them. We might close our eyes to it, put it in the back of our head, repeat it again and again and again because of pride. But if we think about that grand scheme of things, especially as dads, because we're watched all the time and we're trying to navigate life in real time, so the mistakes are bound to happen. You give yourself grace, you give yourself understanding, acceptance for the results, time to reflect. You end up producing an outcome in a new direction that teaches your children how to problem solve, how to keep self-respect, and how to do the right thing the first time.
I think we have to realize and come to the grips that our kids aren't expecting perfection from us as dads. Our partners are not expecting perfection from us as a husband, or we have this high and lofty goal that we don't want to make a mistake. But again, like you said, we're learning it in real time. We've had people model it for us maybe in the past. Maybe we didn't have a good model in the past for our dad or our grandfather, but we are trying to do our best within the limited knowledge we have, and we're making up our path as we go. Going back to the outdoors and with you, if you're on a path for the first time and you've never walked that path before, you don't know what's around the next corner. You have no idea what's coming up. So, without any planning, you're just kind of taking that next step and hoping for the best. So any kind of planning we can do in preparation for that path ahead of us, I think is a good thing to kind of tie back to what you do with your outdoors group.
This idea that comes to mind about how most of the time we navigate life in real time trying to avoid fear. Fear is one of those things that stops us dead in our tracks. For a lot of fathers that don't have relationships with their children, it's more times than not, that's the reason. I speak firsthand, and a lot of men in that same situation have also expressed the same concern. And I think about one of the awesome stories that I've heard as a great example is on a really nice hot summer morning, there was two hikers that set off on a hike. Through the bulk of the day, there was no real struggles or adversities that came up. It was just beautiful weather, a lot of time for good conversation, even some self-reflection. And then as evening came on and the sun started to set, they came to the mouth of this really dense and thick forest. The first hiker stopped, looked around for a minute, and he said, I can't do it. I can't go into that forest. I can't see. What if there's bears or if there's robbers that are hiding around the next tree? So I'm not going. And then the second hiker looked at him and said, yeah, it's getting dark. It's getting hard to see. Sure, there's probably bears out there, maybe even a robber or two. But I've come this far. I'm not going to let the fear of the unknown stop me. And he set off, took him a little bit, but he got to the other end of the forest unscathed. When he turned around, his buddy wasn't with him. The other hikers sat back at the beginning of the forest because he let fear take control. And, we don't exactly know what happened to him outside of the fact that he missed out on the beauty of walking into the unknown, the beauty of allowing himself to expand, see new things, discover new skill sets, new abilities within him. And those are the things that his friend came out the other side with. And, as a father, especially a father that has been away from a child for a long time, it's okay to walk into the unknown. It's okay to do these things. You try to fill that time with things to distract yourself, but you're missing out on the beauty of what could be. And even to speak to fathers who, even with that relationship and the relationship with my youngest son, I only get them every other weekend. To sit and dwell on the pain of that or any other aspect is to stand at the beginning of that forest and refuse to go in. We think about how we have such limited time, but it's that limited time that has the most impact. And we also get back to that guilt idea where we feel guilty because they only see us so often. And a lot of the time at the end of those weekends, they're sad. What the truth of the matter is, we're teaching them something that none of the words, none of the stories, none of anything else that we could do would give them. We're teaching them resilience. We're teaching them how to hold on and continue to the next moment because there is a reward out there for it.
Yeah, and that the value is found in the limitations. So if you have unlimited food, it doesn't seem as valuable because it's unlimited food. Like, oh, well, I'm not going to cherish this food because there's so much of it. If it's unlimited money, well, money means nothing to me because I have so much of it. I don't even think about it. But time is limited, which makes it valuable. So in that makes you want to spend your best amounts of time on the things that matter the most. So I think that's the one thing that we need to keep in mind, that limits do make things more valuable. So embracing that's really important.
That's absolutely correct. And that's absolutely beautiful because it's that time and it's that effort and energy that we put into, even though we can see their little face, the reality is it's still an unknown, right? And when you invest in that time, you're helping them and you're helping yourself at the same time. So you're able to bring balance to two different circles all at once. You do it to your circle personally inside, but you also do it to your relationship with that child. And then even third, you're doing it to them. You're helping them bring balance to their personal circle. And we teach these things without even thinking about it. It gets back to the idea of providing. We all want to provide the best way of life and the best tools for our children. That's what we're doing. So we should change the narrative around, and this is miserable. This is going to suck when a Sunday morning comes around or whatever the case may be, and realize, man, this is great. Not only am I enjoying Friday, Saturday, and Sunday morning with my child, having these great memories that we build, But when the end of the weekend comes, we're reinforcing that one really powerful tool that's going to teach them to turn toward light later on down the road.
So, Mike, we come and we sign up to come work with you at Project Mindfully Outdoors. We arrive, we park our vehicle, we get out. What's going to happen? Like, tell us. We're not just going for a walk with you in the bush. There's a point to all of this. Can you kind of give us an overview what it's like to come and spend some time with you? I'd like to know more about this.
Well, I don't want to set the expectation that this isn't something anybody can do, because it's one person walk.
Okay.
And the reason that I say it that way is because I incorporate a lot of different meditation practices. And the very first one that I always touch on is the art of walking meditation, which is building the connection with the ground beneath you. Once you've got that connection with the ground beneath you, the ability really, the sky's the limit, because you can get into the different skill set that it goes to the backwoods and everything. And it helps you to build and utilize skills that are going to bring out your self-worth, your self-value, to make that investment that you're putting into the world that much stronger, because you believe in yourself. And then when the meditation comes in, where we do a sit-down guided meditation and different things like that, those tools are helping teach you to reflect, to ask yourself these hard questions, to center and focus your thoughts, to slow things down. And also, another thing that they really, really help with is something that a lot of men struggle with: anger. Because when you get fired up, you forget that you have the choice to breathe and choice to calm yourself down. So we get into all these deep things while we're simply having fun, while we're simply taking an adventure, exploring new ground, mentally and physically.
So you're doing this in class settings. So again, if I'm looking to come work with you, what else do I need to do to prepare before I come to see you? Like, what's my preparation on my end before we meet?
Well, your preparation on your end is really very, very minimal. I've developed what I do to keep it simple, to keep it something that anybody can tap into. What it takes for you on your end is simply reaching out to me and scheduling a free call where we can make the plans for what it is that you want to achieve, and then craft the adventure, the journey, whatever. But now when it comes to the classes are just simply you sign up, you show up. I walk you through all the rest. There's nothing special that goes into being ready to go. You don't have to expect to come out and walk 100 miles, spend like 3 weeks living out in the woods, whatever. We do this on a whole thing, on a kind of a custom based experience where it's whatever you're comfortable with. And that's something that a lot of people end up finding to be a real eye opener. They want to come out, they want to go on the fun adventure, but they don't think they can do it. And when you walk them through it in a way that speaks to their skill set or their ability, man, they're hooked. And when they get hooked on the adventure, they're hooked on making these different little steps that are going to help with the healing. They're going to help with the growth. And the other thing that I've added in recently is I've started doing like indoor classes that kind of take a play on different like sweat lodge ideas, which are really fun and unique. I'm getting a lot of fun and really cool feedback on that, where again, it's all about making these things speak to you. It's all about making these things fun and exciting, because in my world that I work in, there's a lot of that granola kind of stigmas around, where it's, man, I got to shave my head. I got to listen to some chant CD for 3 hours and sit still. It couldn't be farther from the truth. There's something within your life right now that you do every single day that would be a part of meditation if you open up your mind to it. That's what I found out. Because when I added meditation to my world, it was based off a conversation that I thought it with all those same stigmas. And then I went out back and I picked up my crossbow and I started shooting. And as I was hitting the bullseye, I realized I was practicing all the different skills that were needed for meditation. When I sat down and I put it all together, that's where I learned how to focus my thoughts. And you know what? Actually, that brings up, because I just did this with a group about a half hour ago. If we got time, I want to run you through this because I think this will be fun for you and the listeners will get a good taste of it too.
Yeah,
All
let's
right.
do it.
So whenever you're comfortable, you can just assume a position, maybe close your eyes and just focus on your breathing. Just feel the inhale, feel the exhale. And as you start to feel a little bit more comfortable, go ahead and start drawing a long inhale and then a long exhale. And what we're going to do in between is we're going to hold ourselves before we take the next step. So I'll have you inhale and I'll count to 4. We'll hold it, then we'll exhale and we'll do it again. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Go ahead and inhale. 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4. Exhale. 2, 3, 4. Inhale. 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4. Exhale. 2, 3, 4. And when you're ready, you can just return back to your normal breathing. This was just a simple run through what they call a box breath. And now, as you begin to return to your normal course of breathing, start to see in your mind a bright blue sky and allow the clouds to start to drift in from the horizon. And the reason that these clouds drift in is because of the winds that are carried by Mother Earth. She has control of those clouds, just in the same way that we have control of our thoughts. So if you would, start to take those thoughts that are running through your mind and attach each one to an individual cloud. And as they're sailing around, just like Grandmother Earth's wind can move them, you can do the same. I'd like for you to pull the closest cloud into your vision and just sit with whatever their thought may be. Then when you're comfortable and you're ready, you've experienced that thought, you've understood a little bit more about what it's asking of you or requiring or trying to teach you, you can let it go and just let it drift back into the distance. And if you'd like, you can bring in the next closest cloud and repeat the process. Then let it drift back to the horizon. And because we have to be respectful of Dave's time with this podcast, all good things must come to an end. So when you're comfortable, I'm going to ask you to open your eyes, bring yourself back into this wonderful conversation.
Well,
just a simple way to play with words and ideas and help us understand that no matter what's going on in the moment, we still have control.
The one thing I was thinking about, Mike, while we're going through that, and just the way you do this, you said at the beginning that you were homeless and you were living out of your truck in a hunting blind. And I know for any time that I've spent in a hunting blind, you better be quiet up there because any animal's going to hear you from miles away. Any stirring, any laughing, commenting, you drop something. That kadunk is just enough for them to be out of your area. They're gone. So your home when you were homeless is now what you do today. You're helping people to get into that spot where you have to be quiet in that hunting blind. You have to be intentional. You have to be focused. You have to be thinking about your breathing. You got to be very still. You're doing that now, but you're not homeless and you're not in that hunting blind. But now you're helping us to experience that moment so that we can be better, which is interesting. I'm putting those two and two together as we talk today, that you're back in that hunting blind again, but you brought us with you this time. And you're teaching us these things while we're sitting up there in the tree and those deer and whatever are walking below us. You're doing that exact same thing right now.
That's where this all really comes full circle and it becomes fun. It becomes cool, is the fact that, like I mentioned earlier, we all have something that we do, which involves stillness, breath, silence, and essentially meditation. We never even put two and two together. I can share yesterday, I had some free time, so I went out to one of my favorite spots locally to sit and just meditate. And I was there probably about 20 minutes before I heard some rustling in the brush off in the distance. And this little fawn I'm running through. Well, yesterday she didn't come running through, but I don't know what it is about that spot, but lately she's been really loving to come through there when I'm out there. I was out there a couple weeks ago and recording and writing, and she came running through and almost ran me over. But yesterday she actually was just kind of, fumbling around, and I noticed some more rustling off, and I seen her mom, just off in the distance watching over. She came within about 2.5 feet. I almost could have reached out and petted her. It was absolutely amazing.
Well, see, yeah, and that's the kind of stuff I love, Mike, and that's what I love about what you do. It's you're definitely helping people to reconnect with themselves. You're helping people to be healthier. I think men in particular, we have Men's Mental Health Month. We have all of that around there to raise awareness for men that your mental health matters. And when we can have a resources and someone in our corner like you to help us connect with our mental health and to find the tools we need to work through some of these things, I love that you have a resource for men specifically that they can connect with themselves in this way. So I love what you do.
Thank you.
It's great. So again, the podcast, Mike, and the website, where do we go so that we can connect with you further?
So most importantly, the website, which is kind of like my base camp, you can get to everything else through it, is projectmindfulloutdoors.co. And I want to throw it out there, the fact that I don't just work exclusively in person or put this podcast out there. If you're listening to this in an area that we can't connect face to face, we can do it through a Zoom call, whatever the case may be. It gets back to the model that I use, that this needs to be intangible and touchable for everybody to get into. And of course, the podcast is Project Mindfully Outdoors. You can find that on every podcast player that it is, wherever you're listening to this beautiful show.
Excellent. Mike, thank you so much for taking us outside again and helping us to connect with the world around us. I really appreciate you making time to be on the show.
It's been a pleasure, like always, to sit down and have these conversations with you. I love when we get together and get to celebrate the word, the message, the journey, all that beautiful stuff.
Excellent. For all you dads out there, reach out to Mike. Have a conversation. I know he'd love to hear from you. I know he'd love to talk to you. And if you got some value from today, please go out and reach out to Mike and encourage him on his journey to help others. And when you can, sign up. Do something online with Mike or go in person. I think you're going to go pet a deer. Why not? Mike will help you with that. Mike, thank you so much for this.
Oh, no problem. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Hey, thanks for listening to Dad Space. Thanks for hanging out to the end of the podcast. That's a great sign to wherever you're listening to this podcast, YouTube, Spotify, Apple, fill in the blank, that this was a good podcast to send people to. So simply by listening to this point of the podcast, you're helping the show grow. So good on you. Thanks for helping us grow Dad Space. If you want to help us fill our cups over at Dad Space, head over to dadspace.ca. Dadspace.ca, simple website, right? Dadspace.ca. You can fill up our coffee cup, which helps us then to keep moving forward with the podcast, and use our Buy Me a Coffee link over at dadspace.ca. Thank you for being here. Thank you for supporting the show. Thank you for coming back. And thank you for sharing. Because the more dads we can help, the better. We're all here to help each other grow in community. That's what it's all about. And without you, the podcast is pointless. There's no reason to do any of this. So you being here means everything. See you at dadspace.ca. Take care.